Welcome to part 3 of the series of the Empowered Woman, learning the Sicha from the Rebbe from Parshas Bay and Parshas Beshalach, Tafshin Nun Beis, the year 1992. In this Sicha, the Rebbe speaks about the importance and the role of the Jewish women in bringing Mashiach, specifically in connection with the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz. And the Rebbe shows how this idea is expressed in a few ways. In the time that the Rebbe was speaking, which was in the month of Shvat, just around the time of Yud Shvat, which was the day of the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is also close to the time of the passing of a few other wives of the Chabad Rebbeim. The Rebbe also connects it to the Parsha by El Pare, as well as the Parsha of Beshalach in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Miriam and her song after the splitting of the sea, as well as the Haftarah of Shiras Devorah, the song of Devorah. And the Rebbe explains how all this is relevant to us now as Jewish women on the threshold of the times of Mashiach. So, in this part 3, we will learn that the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and its connection to women bringing Mashiach is also connected to an elevation of a very high level of spiritual light or godliness, which is also connected to the Jewish women who light the Shabbos candles. So we can see this by looking at the parsha of the week, Parshas Bayit, and that was the parsha of the time that the Rebbe was speaking, or just about around Yud Shvat, the day that the previous Rebbe was passing. And it happens to be that this parsha also talks about the beginning of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which was in the merit of the righteous woman at that time, as we explained in part 1, and as is said in the Gemara Saita, B'schos nashim tzidkaniyas shahayu ba'isa hadar negalu Yisrael b'Mitzrayim, that it was in the merit of the righteous woman at the time that the Jewish people were redeemed from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. So, the Rebbe starts by looking at the words in the first words in Parshas by El Pare. Now, there's a common question. It's asked, why does Hashem say to Moshe, come to Paro and not go to Paro? Hashem was sending Moshe to go speak to Paro, to ask him to let the Jewish people go, and Hashem says, come to Paro. So, the Zohar explains that Hashem brought Moshe chamber within chamber, and to Paro, and to his counterpart in Kedusha, in holiness, Hashem brought him to this very high level called Espariu ve'esgalin mine kol nahirin, which literally means I will expose and I will reveal from there all lights. So this is a concept that needs to be discussed and elaborated on so we can understand what we're talking about. So we're going to take a look in the Zohar. We have two ideas, two places that the Zohar talks about this. The first is in this parsha where we're talking about Hashem bringing Moshe chamber within chamber to this level of Parai in holiness, and also this idea, this level that's called Espariu v'Eskalim Minin Kol Naharin, which is addressed in the Zohar when it talks about Beis Parai, in Parshas Vayigash, says Vayishma Beis Parai, that the house of Parai heard about the whole story between Yosef and his brothers, and how these people that had come to Mitzrayim were actually Yosef's brothers. And there it talks about, it expresses this idea that Beis Parai is a certain level in Lamaila, in the spiritual realm, that is called from where it's revealed all sorts of spiritual lights. Now, in this Sicha and in this part that we're discussing here, the Rebbe only mentioned this in like a single sentence and in passing, so to speak. However, in the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Bay that year, 1992, the Rebbe elaborated this idea at length, and it's actually printed. This essay this is printed in this Sefer HaSichas Tafshin Nun Beis, just before the Sicha that we're learning. And there the Rebbe elaborates on this in great detail. So I'm going to give a little bit of background just to give us some context and understanding what we're talking about. So the Zohar explains that Hashem accompanied Moshe to the spiritual source of Parai in Kedusha. Now, in the there's a physical in the world, everything has a spirit. There's the physical and the spiritual counterpart. And within Parai, there's three levels. There's the level of Parai as he is in this world as a evil Egyptian king. We have the level of Parai as is his source in Klipa and evil, and the level of Parai as its source in holiness in Kedusha. So Moshe was scared to go to, as a human being, to go to meet Parai in its source, in Klipa and in Kedusha, both of them. Moshe was scared to go there. And so Hashem said, I'll accompany you. I, Hashem, who is beyond finite and beyond infinite, has the power to fuse finite Moshe and infinite source of Parai and bring them together. So this Hashem wanted Moshe to encounter and conquer the evil of Parai, as well as to access the spiritual source of Parai and the extreme high revelation of Beshalach, Geulah, Mini Kol Nahirin, all types of lights uncovered and revealed from there, which is a very lofty level that Moshe was scared of. And so therefore Hashem said, I'll come with you because only I alone am able to fight Parai and to conquer him. And that's what the Zohar says, that Hashem brought Moshe into chamber after chamber to the spiritual snake, so to speak, this level of Parai in Klipa, and in order to conquer it, and to the level of Parai in Kedusha, to the highest level of Previous Lubavitcher in that place from where this lofty revelation of spiritual lights is revealed. So that's just the main idea. We can go into this in more detail, perhaps. I'm just going to make a disclaimer now, which I should have said earlier, which is that, firstly, I only know so much from what I learn, and there are many people who know a lot more than I do, especially in the realm of Chassidus, which is very deep and infinitely great. So I will do my best to teach what I can based on the knowledge I know. However, that's very limited. And secondly, we all make mistakes, and especially when sitting in front of a camera and recording, not everything that I say is exactly precise, and it's difficult, especially being that I don't have a group of people sitting around me that can question or point out or correct a small mistake that I say. So there are times that I may say something that may not be 100% accurate by mistake. I'll do my best to prepare properly and to explain everything I can to properly. However, there are times where, for example, I know in one of the previous shiurim I mentioned the idea of Za, the 7 midas. I was talking about Za and Malchus, and I said that Za is the 7 midas. However, Za is actually 6 midas, because Malchus is the 7th. Whatever. Basically, my point is that I may be explaining things, but not exactly clearly, or maybe with slight mistakes, and I apologize in advance. And if you have any comments or corrections or feedback that you want to share with me, you are welcome to do so. I'm happy to hear from you. And I apologize in advance for any slight mistakes that may come across, or anything that's not explained clearly. And as I said, Chassidus is infinitely deep, and there's much, much more behind every little concept that can be expressed. There's a lot more depth to it, and I'll only do my best to explain what I can for the sake of learning the Sicha in a deeper way. That being said, I'll try to give over a small amount of the idea of this Asperiyavas Geulah Mini Kol Nahirin, the idea of Parai and Kedusha, being that this is what the Rebbe is teaching us now, is going to help us understand the passing of the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and its connections to the movement. So there's Pare as he is manifest on three levels. There's Pare the person, there's Pare his source in evil in Klipa, and this the source of Pare in holiness and Kedusha. So just as Pare in this world is a very evil person, wicked king, so too in his source, on the flip side, the Pare's source in spirituality is an extremely high, lofty level of godliness. So the extreme goes from one end to the other. The extremely high, lofty godliness is manifest and in a very extremely evil, wicked person. After so many descending evolutions through the spiritual worlds and many concealments, that extremely high, lofty level of godliness evolves and is manifest into something extremely the opposite. The physical manifestation of Pare as an evil person. So Pare in his source in Kedusha, in holiness, is this chamber of chaotic revelation of all types of godliness that is usually concealed, and from there it's revealed. And this revelation is coming from Atmos, from the essence of Hashem himself, that level of godliness that is Hashem's essence. So only from there comes this revelation of all sorts of lights that are usually concealed, from there are being revealed. So it's quite unique and lofty. Because of the essence of Pare in its source, in evil, Moshe was scared to go to him. So Hashem said, come. That Moshe will come there with Hashem. Hashem will accompany Moshe to this inner essence of this level of evil, of Pare, in order that they can conquer it and transform it together. So that's understood as to why Moshe was scared of this very extreme level of evil. But why was Moshe scared of this extreme lofty level of godliness and holiness and Kedusha? So Pare in Kedusha is in a very extreme, high revelation of godliness in two unique ways. Number one is it's a revelation of all lights, all levels of godliness that are usually concealed. So it's everything, all lights that are, all godliness that's usually concealed is being revealed there. And that's a lot to handle. And its revelation is in a chaotic way. It says, like, the word espario, also, which means exposed, also is from the word like parua beli seder, without order. It's this revelation is beyond the normal spiritual order of things, and beyond the normal boundaries. So this was very scary for Moshe, and what's more than that is that all this is coming from Atmos and Moshaich, from the very essence of Hashem himself. And that's why Moshe, as a human being, a limited person in a physical body, was scared to be able to access this level of awesome chaotic revelation of godliness, which is beyond the norm, beyond the normal boundaries and order of spirituality. So Moshe was like, I can't go there. How am I going to handle all this? And that's why Moshe needed the assistance of Hashem. And only Hashem, who is beyond both finite and beyond infinite, is able to fuse and access the finite and the infinite. So therefore, Hashem himself needed to bring Moshe to the source of Pare in holiness, so that Moshe, as a physical person, can access this awesome infinite revelation of godliness with the power of Hashem, which is beyond finite and infinite. And it's interesting that this encounter is a necessary step in the process of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the redemption from Mitzrayim, because the leaving Mitzrayim was in order for the Jewish people to go to Har Sinai to be able to get the Torah. And at that time, by Matan Torah, by the giving of the Torah, there was this fusion of infinite and finite. The world and the spirituality of Torah were able to come together, and that's a unique power that was accessed only by Matan Torah, that was given to the Jewish people, that we have now in order to fuse physical and spiritual, to fuse finite and infinite. We needed that kind of impetus and that power from Hashem in order to give us that that power to be able to fuse finite and infinite ourselves through our Torah mitzvahs, and to make a home for Hashem in this world by revealing godliness within the world. And this is also obviously a preparation and a necessary power that we need to bring Mashiach, when the whole world will be that fusion of finite and infinite, the revelation of godliness within the entire world. So Hashem, this encounter of Moshe with Parai in its spiritual source, that Moshe as a physical person should encounter this very lofty level of godliness, of godly lights that are beyond order and boundary, was something that was a necessary step in the process of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the process of giving the Jewish people the power to do their mission in the world, to make the world a place of revealed godliness. And that needed the power of Hashem, because Hashem is beyond finite and infinite. So this is a little bit of a background of what we're talking about when we say Espariu v'Eskalim Mine Kol Neharin, that Hashem wanted Moshe to access this level. And in this, so how does this relate to our talk and discussion about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and his passing? So this whole concept hints to the connection of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, the Nasi Hadar, who is the leader of our generation and the Moshe of our generation, as the Rebbe says. As it says in the Midrash of Previous Rabbah, there's no generation that does not have someone like Avram Avinu. There's no generation that does not have someone like Yaakov. There's no generation that does not have someone like Moshe. And there's no generation that does not have someone like Shmuel. And in many other places in the Gemara and in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it explains the idea that in every generation there is an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the generation, who has the soul of Moshe. And so when we talk about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe as the leader of our generation, of the previous generation, and the Moshe of our generation, so this dynamic of this encounter of Moshe Rabbeinu with Parai is something that can relate to the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe as well, as he is the Moshe in our generation. So Rebbe explains that his histalkus is a term for passing. Histalkus is also a term for removal, and it's also a term for elevation, and we're going to explain that in a minute. So his histalkus is an elevation to this very high level of godly light revealed, this level of Espariu v'Eskalim Mine Kol Neharin. So the idea of the passing of a tzaddik being called a histalkus, it's not a removal of his presence. When a tzaddik passes away, he doesn't leave the world, but rather, as the Zohar says, a tzaddik that when a tzaddik passes away, he is found in all worlds, including in this physical world, more than in his lifetime. How is this? What does this mean? How is this possible? Sarah explains in the footnote and brings a few sources from Torah as well as the Tanya, that the meaning of the word siluk is usually removed. However, in the Zohar, there's the term estalik yikra de kutchabrichu b'kol almin, which is a term that's also brought in the Maimer Basi Lagani, which is the Maimer that was dedicated for the day of Yud Shvat, the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And in that term, in that phrase, estalik yikra de kutchabrichu b'kol almin, we're talking about the glory of Hashem that's revealed in all worlds when a person conquers the evil, or transforms their negative desires and into holiness. And so there we see this idea of estalik, the word estalik, which usually means remove, being used as to express the idea of revelation. And how is this? Why is this so? So there we're talking about a revelation of Or HaSayviv Kol Almin, which is a transcendent light that is in a way beyond the level that it is reaching. So let's say we're drawing down the level of Or Sayviv into a certain world. That level of godliness is still transcendent and somewhat beyond that world. So let's explain. In Torah, Parshas Vayakel, we talk about this revelation is a very high transcendent level that cannot be absorbed within the vessel, the kli, that it's reaching in an internal way. So it's almost like a flash and gone. It's here and gone. It comes to that level. It reaches that level, but it's not something that's absorbed and tangible, so to speak, on that level. And therefore, it's called siluk, removed, because in a sense, it's transcendent and beyond, in a way of raimamus. So in other words, we're talking about, let's say, the light of Seiv of Ka'alman. It's being drawn down from Atmos. So it's a certain level that there is a Hamshacha. It's coming down from its source into um, that world, or whatever world it's reaching. However, because it can't be absorbed in that world, and it can't be accessed in that world in a tangible way, so to speak, it's it's kind of hovers beyond it. So in a similar way, when we talk about tzaddik passing away, when a tzaddik is alive in this world, his life, his true being is his emunah, his ava, and his yira. It's a spiritual life, right? That's what he's all about. Now, as a person in the physical body, his emunah, ava, and yira are all confined to the body, and they can only be expressed through the limitations of the body, through his. So the people and his talmidim can learn from him and can receive from him an array of his emunah, his ava, and his yira. They can only receive from him whatever is physically possible for a tzaddik to give over and to express to them. However, who the tzaddik really is in his essence and the true being of his ava and yira and emunah, which make up his who he is much more than what the people and his talmidim can access and get from him, because he's so much more than what he can express in a physical from himself as a physical being. However, when a tzaddik passes away, the neshama is separated, and the ruach of the tzaddik goes into Gan Eden, and then his emunah and his ava and yira, which are within his ruach, are not any longer limited to the expression of the physical body. They're not limited to a specific time and place. They're not limited to a specific person. They become unbounded by the physical realm, because they're spiritual, and therefore they don't go away from the world, but they're just unlimited by the world. Similar to this idea of Seivev, this level of godliness that transcends the realm that it's being drawn down to. So the tzaddik is still here in the world, but not in a physical body, and not limited by his physical body, and therefore the talmidim of the tzaddik can access the tzaddik in a way that's beyond limitations of the physical world. And so that's why we can say that the Zohar says that a tzaddik is found more in this world after he passes away, because he's a more accessible, more relatable, in a sense that he's unlimited. However, there is obviously that disadvantage that he's no longer a physical person with a physical body that can relate to people on a physical level, and therefore we are lacking to a certain degree, because we are physical human beings, so that's how we relate to people. So we are, in a sense, there is what we call a siluk, a removal to a certain degree, because it's not something that we can relate to and hold it in our hands. At the same time, it's a revelation of in a greater way, because it's unlimited by the concealment of the physical body, which can only express a minute ray of what it truly is. And this is what's talked about in Tanya and Igeres HaKodesh Chav Zayin as well. So the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz brought him to reach this lofty level of Esperivis Gali Yamina Kol Mehainin, the godliness from Atmos being revealed, and the culmination of his Avaida to bring godliness into the world through Torah mitzvahs was accessing. So let's backtrack a second. So this revelation of godly lights, of all types of lights, was the culmination of the entire work of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe in his life, and that is culminated at the time of his passing. So all that he accomplished in his life, that spiritual levels that he accessed in his life, are being expressed in the world by his passing in a way that's beyond the physical limitations of the body, and therefore it it's something that we can call revelation to a certain degree, yet not relatable in physical terms. And that so his whole avodah in the time of his life was to light up the world through the avodah of Torah and mitzvahs, through doing Torah mitzvahs with the ner mitzvah, the Torah ar, which is a quote from Mishlei, where we talk about mitzvah as a candle and Torah being light. And now we're going to segue from this idea of ner, the avodah, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, to light up the world with ner mitzvah, the Torah ar, with the light of mitzvah and the Torah. We're going to segue into the connection between Jewish women. And so this idea of lighting up the world with the light of Torah mitzvahs, which is the work of that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe has trying to do his whole life and which he kind of acts and at his time of his passing, accessing this level of Espirilis Gali Mini Kol Nahir, and this lofty revelation of godliness, which he accessed only, as a neshama outside the guf, so was not brought down into the physical reality, but it's still found within this world. So this whole idea is emphasized in connection with the Jewish women who have one of their main mitzvahs is the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, which is the mitzvah of ner Shabbos v'yom tif ner mitzvah v'tayar ar, as we've just explained. And the interesting how the Torah brings in a couple of footnotes to elaborate on this idea that says in the Zohar that someone who is accustomed to lighting Shabbos candles will have bani talmidei chachamim, children who are talmidei chachamim. Why is this? How do we see this? Because it says in the Gemara in Shabbos as well, and Rashi explains, it says ner mitzvah Torah ar. So through the ner mitzvah, the mitzvah of candles, of Shabbos candles, one is merits Torah ar, the light of Torah. So through the doing the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, we merit the light of Torah. And just interesting to note, this is something that many Jewish women think about and daven for when they light Shabbos candles, to daven that their children should grow up to be talmidei chachamim and their daughters should marry talmidei chachamim. Because that connection between ner mitzvah and Torah are the light of the Shabbos candles and the connection with Torah. So this light of Shabbos candles isn't just a spiritual, it's not just a mitzvah, which is a spiritual light, but it's actually a mitzvah, which is a physical light, which is also unique because the light of the Shabbos candle is, in addition to it being a mitzvah, which is a godly light, it's also a physical light that expresses that godly light. And more than that, so the Shabbos candles, which are called ner mitzvah, being that it's a ner that's a mitzvah, also represents all mitzvahs, which are called ner. And we see this in an interesting way, that the word ner is the gematria of 250. And there are 248 mitzvahs aseh, positive commandments, and which represent the 248 limbs of Hashem, so to speak, which on a Kabbalistic concept, which is there are 248 mitzvahs aseh, and there are also 248 limbs in a person, and these represent, so to speak, like 248 spiritual limbs of God. And these 248 mitzvahs need the two hands or the two wings of love and fear of Hashem, which motivate us to do the mitzvahs. So it explains in Tanya and in the Zohar that in the Zohar says that Torah without Ava and Yira does not fly above. What does this mean? So Tanya explains in Parak Mem this idea that just as we can have a bird, which is a bird without wings, is fully kosher. It's not considered like a blemish because it can still live without its wings. It just can't fly. However, it needs the wings to fly. Similarly with Torah mitzvahs, when a person does a mitzvah, they accomplish a unification of godliness that exists regardless of the intention and the motivation behind the mitzvah. That mitzvah accomplished it. However, in order for that unification of godliness to be expressed and revealed in a place where it can be appreciated in the spiritual world, it needs the motivation and the intention of love and fear of Hashem. And that love and fear of Hashem is called the wings, which can help the mitzvah fly, so to speak, up into the spiritual realms where it can, where that the what the mitzvah accomplishes can be appreciated. So this is the idea of like the 248 mitzvahs aseh, along with the wings of love and fear of Hashem, which themselves are also mitzvah, but in addition to that, being the motivators for the mitzvah. And so 248 plus 2 is 250. So here we have the idea of the Ner mitzvah and the Ner Shabbos representing the 248 mitzvahs plus the two wings of Avin Yer, which make them fly up into the place where they can be appreciated. So here we have this idea of Ner Shabbos representing all mitzvahs being done in a proper way. So we can also point out that the Ner mitzvah, the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, is as we welcome in the Shabbos, and that the Shabbos candles themselves bring in the Shabbos. Even before the men daven Ma'ariv, the women bring in the Shabbos through lighting Shabbos candles, and this represents the culmination of all of our avodah throughout the days of the week to light up the world with Torah mitzvahs. In other words, throughout the week we have a mission of transforming the physical world into a home for Hashem, of lighting up the world with the light of Torah mitzvahs, and then we come to Shabbos and we light those Shabbos candles, and that represents that mission that we've accomplished throughout the week. And then we go into Shabbos, which is like, fully, entirely godliness. And this is also indicative of the idea of the work that we do throughout our entire life, throughout the whole time of Geulah in the world, transforming the world to a place of godliness, and then the time of Shabbos, which is time of Mashiach, which we'll touch upon in a few minutes. So the Rebbe actually references the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch on the halachas of Shabbos candle lighting, and it explains there that the women lighting Shabbos candles is what brings in Shabbos, and that's why after a woman lights her Shabbos candles, she should drop the wick and not like blow it out, because Shabbos has already come in. Even before the men daven Ma'ariv. And there are those opinions that say Shabbos only comes in after the men daven Ma'ariv, but being that we hold by the opinion that Shabbos comes in as soon as the woman lights Shabbos candles, if there was a unique situation where a woman needed to light Shabbos candles and then continue doing malacha and continue not accept Shabbos yet, she needs to make that a condition, that she needs to kind of stipulate that she's not accepting Shabbos yet, and this is something that should only be done in unique pressing circumstances and not something that should be done on a regular basis, because it is in fact the case that when a woman lights Shabbos candles, she's brought in the Shabbos for herself. So we see that power of the Jewish woman in kind of expressing this start of Shabbos and this culmination of our work throughout the week. And similarly, it is in connection to the whole avodah of our Nasi Hadar, who represents the entire generation in the idea of lighting up the world with Ner Mitzvah and Torah Ar, that the culmination of it, the culmination of his avodah, the avodah of the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, was on Shabbos. The culmination of his avodah being the day of his passing was on Shabbos, which is brought in through lighting Shabbos candles, and was on the Shabbos Parshas Bay El Pare, which is the idea of Espariya V'Skali Mini Kol Naharin, this revelation of all lights. And the Rebbe emphasizes the word all lights. This revelation of all lights, which includes the ultimate light of Mashiach. The Rebbe says more mainly that this is a hachana, that the passing of the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe and the completion of all of his avodah is a hachana, a preparation for the ultimate complete light of Torah mitzvahs, as it will be at the time of Mashiach, when we'll be able to do the will of Hashem in the ultimate way, in a way of Espari V'Skali Mina Kol Nahirin, when all revelations of godliness will be revealed, as it will be at the time of Mashiach, L'asad Lavai, L'yom shekulei Shabbos, U'menucha l'chaye alamim, as it says in the Gemara Tamid, that the day which is entirely Shabbos and Menucha, tranquility forever, which is talking about the time of Mashiach. So let's just touch upon what is this idea of k'mitzvahs v'tzaynecha that is quoted here. That when Mashiach comes, we'll be able to do the mitzvahs according to the will of Hashem in the proper way. So, so now when we are in Geulah and all of the time up until the time of Mashiach, when we do a mitzvah, we are trying to accomplish a transformation of the physical, an elevation of the physical world to holiness. Now, when we take a look at the idea of karbanis, for example, the idea is that we should elevate the animal into something holy, and to kind of extract the animal aspect of it and to transform it into something holy. Now, in order to be able to do that in the ultimate way, we as human beings need to be completely beyond animal, in order for us to be able to kind of take an animal and elevate it to be beyond the animal. We ourselves need to be beyond the animal, which we are not at the moment, because human beings have within them a nefesh halikis, we have nefesh hasichlis, we have a godly soul, we have an animating soul, and we have a nefesh habahamis, we have an animal soul. And that animal soul has natural tendencies and desires similar to animals. And so as long as we are still somewhat under the control of our animal soul, we are not able to really take an actual animal and transform it entirely. And until we have a true, complete understanding of godliness in a way that is unchanging and unfailing, our animal soul still has some sort of hold on us. So only at the time of Mashiach, when godliness will be revealed to such a degree that we will be entirely, so to speak, committed to an understanding of Hashem in a way that is unchanging and unfailing, only then will we be able to really properly do the avodah of karbanis, of elevating the animal and completely stripping it of its animal self and transforming it into to holiness, to godliness. And so throughout the time of Geulah, our avodah is really to transform ourselves and to elevate ourselves, and we aren't able to entirely and essentially transform the animalistic world, so to speak. Now, I'm giving this over in a very simple way, in a way that I can relate to it and I say it. But in the mimer that this is discussed in Taras Chaim in Parshas Vayechi, as well as in the mimer Hamshech B'Kacha Tafresh Lamed Zayin, it's quite Chassidic concept that it's not something I can really give over on one foot, and so I apologize in advance if it wasn't clear. And like my husband often says, when it's talking about here, it's talking about a specific level, and obviously there are other levels as well. So yes, to a certain degree, we are transforming the world and we're transforming the physicality, and our mitzvahs do make a difference and elevate the world. But to a certain degree, it's not in an ultimate way, because we are not on our ultimate human level. So until we are ultimately elevated to the highest level, we aren't able to transform the world in the ultimate way. And therefore, all the mitzvahs we do now are great, and our mitzvahs, and we're filling the world of Hashem, we're transforming the world and bringing the world to be full of godliness and bringing the world to a place of Mashiach. However, the ultimate mitzvahs and the ultimate transformation and revelation of godliness and the ultimate accomplishment of the mitzvahs will be at the time of Mashiach, and that's why it's called k'mitzvahs v'tzaynecha. And so that's our hope and prayer, that we should get to that point, to be able to fulfill the mitzvahs in the proper way, which we say actually in the Musaf. Talks about the karbanis. In Musaf it says we should go up to the Beis Hamikdash and we should be able to do the mitzvah k'tzaynecha, and to be able to do the Avodah of Kavanis in the ultimate and proper way. And that will be at the time of Mashiach, which will be Liyam Shekol Shabbos Menucha L'Chayim. And that is the end of part 1 of this Sicha, where we see the connection between the passing of the Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, accessing this idea of what Moshe was trying to access in his encounter with Pari, the level of Esperia Beskali Mine Kol Nahayin, a lofty level of spiritual lights being revealed. And that is something that we, as Jewish women, kind of express in our lighting Shabbos candles, bringing the light of Torah and light of Mitzvah into the world, and preparing the world for the time of Mashiach, which is Liyam Shekol Shabbos and Menucha L'Chai Elamim, the ultimate Shabbos. And so in the next part of this Sicha, in part 4, we are going to speak about the role of the Jewish women in bringing Mashiach in connection to the Parsha Beshalach, where we have the Shira of Miriam, and we're going to discuss what was unique about Miriam and her song at the time, and how that relates to us as well in our times.